Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. Today on the channel we're going to talk about The Who, and we're going to talk about some stellar deep tracks in their discography. These are all tracks that were not featured on any of their original studio releases. Through the years they've been featured on, CD reissues as bonus tracks and box sets and compilations and what have you. So today I'm going to feature 10 of my favorites. They have a ton of great deep tracks, but these are 10 of my favorites. They're not in any particular order. I'm just going to throw them out randomly. So the first one is a track that was recorded during the Lifehouse sessions in 1970, which would later become Who's Next. But for some odd reason, it was just taken off the album, not even featured at all. Wasn't released until this album in 1974, the Odds and Sods album. The track I'm talking about is called Pure and Easy. I think it is one of the most incredible Who tracks. And it always has bewildered me why this track was never featured on Who's Next. They could have easily squeezed it in there, maybe thrown off My Wife or Going Mobile. Pure and Easy is like a first-rate Who track from this particular period in their career, 1970, 71. So, on the track, the last track on Who's Next, side one, the song is over. On the coda, they have that line that goes, there once was a note, pure and easy, blah, blah, blah. Well, that particular melody is used for the verse in the song Pure and Easy. Maybe that's why they took it off. Maybe, what would have been cool is if they took My Wife off and put this in place of it, and it would have been a great kind of 1-2 punch, Pure and Easy, and then end the side with This Song Is Over, because it has that same melody that starts on Pure and Easy, and then at the very coda of The Song Is Over, that same melody is repeated. So maybe that's why it was not ever considered for the album release, but I think it's one of their strongest early 70s tracks. I remember back in the day, I remember KMET in LA, Los Angeles radio station. Even KLOS would play this track quite a bit. You never hear it anymore, even on satellite radio. Highly suggest you, if you've never heard this track, if you're not a Who fan or just kind of a mild Who fan, check this track out. It is absolutely amazing. I think it has some of the most emotional guitar work from Pete Townsend, especially in the coda. It's just really something else. So Pure and Easy is one of those tracks, and it's probably one of my absolute favorite Who tracks of all time. It wasn't released until Odds and Sods came out in 1974. This is a compilation album of just outtakes from various albums from about 68 through 71, or even a little earlier, 67 maybe, perhaps. But yeah, Pure and Easy is one of them. Should have been on a Who album. Should have been on this album right here. Who's Next? Next one is another track off of... now, they were really prolific during 1968. The only album... they released, at least in the US, between the Sellout album and Tommy, was this compilation album, which is kind of like their Yesterday and Today album. Bunch of tracks gathered from the 67-68 period. But over the years, I've come to realize that they recorded a lot of stellar tracks in 1968 that they could have compiled a whole album with. And one of my absolute favorite Who tracks of all time is this really unknown track. It, again, off Odds and Sods. It's called Faith in Something Bigger. Has those classic Who harmonies, with Daltrey, Entwistle, and Townsend. It's such a great track. Another one you should look up, pull it up if you've never heard it. It's on side 2. It's the second song right after Pure and Easy. The song is called Faith in Something Bigger, and I noticed that they put this track on the Who's Super Deluxe box set, which was great. In fact, on the Who's Super Deluxe box set, they have a bunch of those really great tracks I've been talking about from 1968. So there's a whole CD dedicated to that era between the Sellout and Tommy period. But Faith in Something Bigger is an absolute top-tier track for me. Check it out if you've never heard of it. Another one is a single that was released, a flop single that was released in 1968, around June 1968. It was a song called Dogs, and it wasn't really released until this compilation came out in the 80s called Two's Missing. It's really the only instance in their discography where you can actually hear a little bit of music hall in the Who's repertoire. Has kind of a Kinks vibe to it. I think it's just a fantastic track. I guess the other three members, other than Townsend, didn't really like it very much. I guess they felt it didn't really represent the Who sound. But again, another great track from 1968, a flop when it came out in its release. It was only released in the UK. And on the flip side of the Dog single was a track called Call Me Lightning, which really rocks. And the first time I ever heard this track was on this Magic Bus, The Who on Tour, which isn't a live album or anything. It's just a compilation. Great track, Call Me Lightning. It's on the Who box set from the 1990s, 30 years of maximum rock and roll. But a great A and B side. You've got Dogs, and then you got Call Me Lightning, which are two great tracks again. From 1968, they could have compiled a really good album from that year, in my opinion. So check out Dogs if you've never heard it. It doesn't sound like any Who song. I love it. Another one, which became a live staple during the 1970 tour, was part of the Who Live at Leeds set, basically, but it was left off the original release. It wasn't released until the full set came out back in the 90s. The track I'm talking about is called Heaven and Hell, John Entwistle song. They started a lot of their shows with this track back in the the late 69, 1970 period. And it's a great showcase for Entwistle and just a fantastic track. There's a live or a studio version that came out, I believe, on one of these Who compilations. I guess this Who's Missing back in 1985, if you want to hear the original version of Heaven and Hell. It was also the B-side of Summertime Blues, the live track off of Live at Leeds. So that's another favorite of mine, Heaven and Hell, written by John Entwistle. Great track. Now, the Who didn't do a whole lot of covers. They did some James Brown covers in their early years, but one of my favorite covers they ever did is this bonus track off the Who, A Quick One / Happy Jack CD. It's a track written by Phil and Don Everly, the Everly Brothers. They wrote the track, and it's called Man with the Money. And just the other day, I was scrolling through YouTube, and I found a really cool live version of it in, I believe it was in France in 1966. Really, really cool. They do Man with the Money live. They do Substitute and My Generation. It's a very quick performance, but never seen a live version of this track until like a few days ago. And it's a bonus track on this Who, A Quick One. Fantastic track. Man with the Money, another great one. Going back to the early 70s, a track that they were starting to play live even as far back as the Woodstock Festival. If you watch the entire Woodstock performance, the last track they do is My Generation, and Pete Townsend starts playing a little bit of these chords that would complete the song eventually. I'm talking about The Naked Eye, which was also featured on the Who's Odds and Sods. Fantastic track. Another track that was considered for the Who's next album, but aborted and became another outtake on this album. But that's another fantastic early 70s outtake from the Who. The Naked Eye just rocks. It's fantastic. Has a lot of dynamics. Verses are real quiet. And then I guess you would say the chorus, the guitar part's very loud, very awesome. So The Naked Eye, another great track. There's a couple of just stellar outtakes on the Who Sellout CD. And one of them is a track called Early Morning Cold Taxi. And that is just fantastic, featuring those just really cool mid-60s harmonies from the Who that I love so much. And then another one called Someone's Coming, which is written by John Entwistle, has him playing this trumpet part, which is kind of like the main riff of the track, I would say. And that's another really good track. So you've got two really cool outtakes here from the Who Sellout period. Early Morning Cold Taxi, and another one called Someone's Coming, written by John Entwistle. And then we go back to, let's go back to the Odds and Sods record again. And if I could find it, there it is. There's a track that they wrote back in 1968. Again, another great track from 1968. Real kind of a silly little song, but it's an anti-smoking song, anti-cigarette song called Little Billy. That was featured in some commercials back in the day. I never saw those commercials. I was too young, but maybe you can remember. I don't know. But it was featured in some anti-cigarette commercials and talks about Little Billy smoking cigarettes and packs a day, etc. Kind of nice little ditty. And again, kind of has a slight tinge, a slight Kinks tinge to it. So that's another favorite of mine. And then last on the list is probably one of my absolute favorite Who outtakes. And again, off the Who Odds and Sods album. It was also featured on the Who's Sell Out as a bonus track. And the track is called Glow Girl. And this track is just amazing. The guitar figurements going on, the guitar patterns. At the very end, the coda of the track, you can hear It's a Boy, Mrs. Walker, or It's a Girl, Mrs. Walker, It's a Girl, which Townshend would reprise for It's a Boy on the Tommy album. But it's just a great power pop track. It just rocks. And again, has those amazing Who harmonies at the end, at the coda, when they're repeating that line, It's a Girl, Mrs. Walker, It's a Girl. So if you never heard Glow Girl, check that track out. That is prime Who 1968, which begs the question, I wonder if they'll ever release a lot of these tracks on one album from 1968. That would make an amazing, amazing Who album, considering that there was a little gap there between Sell Out and Tommy, a couple-year gap. So somewhere there's an unreleased Who album from 1968. In my opinion, that would be stellar. So those are 10 of my favorite Who outtakes, deep tracks. Let me know what some of your favorites are in the comments section. As always, thanks for watching. If you dig the content, press subscribe. Take it easy, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.